There we go. And thank you all for having me back, ladies and gentlemen. So many things come to mind on a day like today: the tragedy, the people, and the many lives that were lost. The many stories of heroism and strength, and the many stories of immense generosity. I was born into a new generation, into a new world, where our safety was not guaranteed, and where terror could very well befall our shores. But today I think of a story I learned during my time as a cadet at the Citadel, a story of hope and a story of generosity, a story about something that we are all very familiar with: the water. During and after the attacks, it was unclear who our enemy was and what was to come. We didn't know if there were more planes coming. We didn't know what was going to happen. And many people began to flee the island of Manhattan, jumping to boats, rafts, tugs, ferries, anything they could find. For me and anyone, including our mayor, who have carried the title as a captain, you know that your first and main responsibility is to that of the safety of your crew and your passengers. But in a larger sense, your duty is to provide help and aid to anyone, any person in need that you have the ability to affect. The story I'm about to tell you is not often told, but on 9/11, scores of tug, ferry, charter boat captains and watermen of all kind began to descend on lower Manhattan to assist with the evacuation. Sensing the need for an organized and safe evacuation, Commander Michael Day of the United States Coast Guard Pilot Boat No. 1 put out the call. Now, when you sign your papers to become a captain, there is a little nondescript box at the end of the form. Very simple. It just says check yes or no. And it says, are you willing to participate in sea lift operations? That means, are you willing to at any time have the Coast Guard or the Navy call you into service to assist with an emergency operation? Now, I don't know if every captain that day had to sign those papers. They may have just been recreational boaters in that position. But when Pilot Boat No. 1 came over the waves with the words that all available boats, this is United States Coast Guard aboard Pilot Boat No. 1, anyone willing to assist with the evacuation of Lower Manhattan, report to Governor's Island. I do know that day that tugs, ferries, and craft of all kind answered the call. And for the people who saw it, when they came out of the dust cloud, the Hudson Harbor was full of tugs, boats, and ferries. They didn't do it for medals or fame or for parades. They did it because, in the words of the French historian Romain Rolland, a hero does what he can. I mentioned this the last time I spoke here. The times we live in are difficult, and we often disagree, and that's okay. But let us not forget that Americans are always willing and able to help our fellow countrymen when we can. Let us not forget the solemn charge of President Lincoln, that it is rather for us the living to be dedicated to the unfinished work, that it is rather for us the living to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us. 9/11 is a sad day in this country's history. There's no other way to cut it. But it is on days like today that I am reminded that the measure of America is not on our small moments, but rather our big ones, when we're able to shake hands, dust off the dirt, and work together. I don't know how many lives the captains saved that day. I do know that 500,000 people were rescued from Lower Manhattan. It was the largest sea lift since Dunkirk in World War II. And that took 3 days to evacuate over 140,000 British troops. It took these captains 9 hours to evacuate 500,000 people from Lower Manhattan. I don't know how many lives they saved, but I do know that they eased some minds. And for anyone who has been through tragedy, you know that the time waiting to get to the end of it is the worst. I know that they reunited families quicker. I know that they saved people from what we thought was an invasion or whatever it was in Lower Manhattan. Let us all go forward from this place and remember that all of those people went and did that just because they knew that they could. And the next opportunity, the next time you have the ability to help someone in need, just because, not for any reason, just because you can, I ask you to do so in memory of all of these people that we've lost. Thank you. May God continue to bless this great town, this great state, and this great nation.